Hey there, welcome to another edition of Cambridge Inside Out. My name is Robert Winners.
Judy Nathans.
We have our guest today. This is the next in a long line of school committee candidates. So why don't you introduce yourself, Emily?
My name is Emily Dexter, as you both know, and
Yes.
I'm a first-term member of the school committee, and I'm running for my first re-election.
First re-election.
Yeah.
Do you,
Last time was my first election, this is my first
Yes.
re-election.
so
Yes.
do you use the same, I don't actually know if you have signs. I guess you have signs?
Yes, I do have signs,
Yeah.
yes, but they're the same signs.
The same
They're
signs.
expensive.
That's right,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you
reuse
collect them, you
right?
recycle
Oh,
them,
yeah,
yay.
pick them all
No,
up, I
you
drop
just-
them by your door if you want one, I pick
Yeah.
them up after.
You do sometimes
Yeah.
see the candidates who get like the new one with the re-elect, you know, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
like, yeah.
probably is
But no,
good.
better to use them actually. There's some candidates actually, like Denise Simmons, I see her signs, she's using exactly the same signs.
Yeah.
For,
Oh, yeah?
You know, probably, for, you know, first time she ran for city council, so.
Worked for Coca-Cola.
Yeah,
Didn't change the logo for a long time.
right, yeah. So actually, one thing I'm going to say straight out here, right directly to the camera here, you know, since I put together the Cambridge candidate pages every year, you know, sometimes candidates actually are relatively unresponsive, unfortunately, and some are very responsive. So I just want to sort of say, your responses
Yeah.
were sort of like, when you're grading, when I'm grading exams. You know, and you sort of say, oh, I don't want to make up an answer key. Let me look for one who's really a good paper here, and then I'm going to use that for the
Yeah.
comparison. That was yours.
Oh,
Okay,
thank you
I
very
have to
much, I
say.
appreciate that.
You know,
I
and-
spent time and tried
you know,
to do it thoroughly.
Yeah.
Even for when I was hunting for questions or questions or things to discuss with other school committee candidates, I actually had yours here. I was saying, oh yeah, maybe
Maybe I should take your job.
we'll just do a trade-off here.
Sure, you can
There
have
we
the
go.
committee now.
Yeah, I have thought about it, but nah,
No.
I don't think so.
No,
Right.
so,
So-
thanks.
So let me just ask you sort of the basic
Yeah,
things
let's get
here,
started.
because you know I always want to, everybody knows who Emily Dexter is, right? But that might not be so, right?
Probably not.
So let's just pretend for a moment
Yeah.
you were a first-time candidate, and just sort of say,
Sure.
who are you and why are you running for the school committee?
Yeah, well, I've been in Cambridge for 27 years. I moved here roughly in 1990, though I did live here for 1 year in 1977, which is very significant because
Oh,
of the changes and what it was like here.
Yes.
I came to the school committee because I work in the field of education. So that's, I would say, one of the main reasons, and that's, I've worked in research, and I've worked in schools, and I've worked in after school, and summer school, a lot of different settings, the Children's Museum, and then I was a parent for 17 years, so those two were all happening at the same time. In fact, my kids were born when I was in graduate school, so so as I worked and got more interested in the schools from a professional point of view and a
Parent,
personal point
yeah.
of view, parent point of view, I started to get more active and became part of committees and boards and started to get my hands, my sleeves rolled up and started doing work. And then people would say, why don't you run for school committee? And I'd say, no, I've got other things to do. And then pretty soon I decided it was the
Yeah,
right thing.
I always like to say both the school committee as well as for the city council, it's almost like Major League Baseball, right? You don't just sort of walk into the majors, right? You sort of start off in the minor leagues.
Yes, I was in the minor
Where
leagues.
you
Yeah.
go through the farm system,
Yes,
you know,
always in
and
the farm.
I think it's sort of
Yeah.
training. I mean, it used to be with city council candidates, some of them would actually spend some time either with some neighborhood associations
Yeah.
or some advocacy.
Many
groups.
of them on the school
It's
committee.
a little less so
Yeah.
these days, but
Yeah.
to some degree, it's still the case. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I think that's one reason why I was able to get elected the first time running is because I already had been involved with a lot of different groups. I'd probably been
Yeah.
on 3 or 4 committees or
I'm
whatever.
trying to remember,
So,
was there an open seat in 2015? Did it-
Mervyn went off. Yeah,
Oh,
Mervyn
right,
Osborne
that's
went
right.
off, so there was
Okay,
that.
it was open, just
yeah.
like there is this year too. There's
It's
one
exactly
open,
the same
right.
situation.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now,
That's the short version.
now this is probably a kind of a weird question to ask, but certainly when I go to city council meetings, there are certain sort of alignments. You sort of see some people often vote together or whatever. You tend to see some groupings philosophically or otherwise. So, I actually don't go to school committee meetings
Yeah.
that often. Are there kind of camps of any sort in the school committee, or is it sort of every issue's its own story?
Fortunately, I don't think there are camps. I think there are styles and there's history. So some people have
History,
worked
right, 'cause
together
they've been
for
there so
a
long,
number of
right, yeah.
terms that have
Yeah.
that history. Monique Bowman and I came on together as sort of the
Right.
freshmen.
Right.
Kathleen Kelly had been on 1 term. So there's relationships, I would say. I wouldn't
Sure.
say and everybody has a different opinion, but it shifts
Right.
around who agrees
Yeah.
with whom.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like there's
I
camps.
think
necessarily.
Jefferson would have called those fluid majorities, right?
Oh, is that what he said?
Yeah, yeah. The thing is, in other words, it shouldn't just be your party does this monolithically, your party does this.
Yeah,
you know.
we don't have a party.
It really depends on the
feeling.
context
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
setting.
yeah.
You know, and I actually, I see it's often true with both bodies. Actually, is that there's often a lot of consensus for most
Yes.
things.
Yes, I think that's right.
And then there are some sort of more contentious things.
Mm-hmm.
So.
The differences are always in the details. It isn't
Yeah.
in a general orientation towards equity or progressive education, but it's what does that look like? What does that mean? Should we do this with this program, this with this program, let these kids in, not let these kids in? It's always details that people differ on.
Was there one issue that kind of was the most challenging for the committee this past, since?
There wasn't any one big issue
Yeah.
because we were doing two things. One, when I came on, when we all started, Jeff Young had 6 months left in his term.
That's right, so
So
you
we
were
were
dealing with the whole
we had to write a
superintendent,
budget
right.
at that time, the
Oh,
same as
right,
we always
right,
do,
right.
but it was easing him out.
Right.
And then with the new Dr. Salim coming
Right.
in, we've been transitioning
Right.
him
Okay.
in. So all the issues have been kept at a pretty low level.
Okay.
But I think now that he's really
Sort of
gotten
more
his
established,
self
yeah.
up and running, we will have to take on some big issues which are just waiting to be taken on. I'm sure you want to know what I think those are.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I would.
Yeah.
No, I know. And I'm saying, in a way, this is sort of my coming to school in a way because,
Sure.
I go up Sullivan Chamber of the City Hall, and I probably know more what's going on with that body than most anyone, including the 9 counselors sometimes, I think.
Yes, I think so.
But honestly, there was a time I maybe went to some school committee meetings and tried to get it, but it's a bit of a steep learning curve. Maybe if you have kids in the system, whatever, it comes faster. But for me, it was never easy to sort of get what the
Yeah, I think
the
it
gist
does
of
help
things.
if you've had a child that's gone through the system, because you sort
Yes.
of have some history to it.
Yeah.
You kind of know
Oh,
what
yes.
elementary schools look like, you
Yeah.
know what the change, it does help.
Yeah,
Right. So,
yeah.
so what are the
Yeah, I would say I have an encyclopedic knowledge of the public schools
Right.
because I have
At this
studied them
point, yeah.
so intensely.
Right.
But it's true that when you're a parent in the system and
Yeah.
you know other parents in the system, you're following what's happening at the different schools, and
Right.
it more or less becomes like your family issues. You know what they are when you see
All right,
them.
so let me ask the
So-
easy question first,
Okay.
which is,
Uh-huh.
what are the things? Give me just a few examples of things that are essentially settled, where people are not, they're not contentious or whatever. So, so
I don't know if
example.
there are any of that, but
Well, I mean, like,
like
for
our great
example,
configuration.
right. So when we did
That's
this
settled.
whole,
Yeah.
what they, I
The
never
upper
liked the
school,
term
yeah.
innovation
No.
agenda,
Yeah.
but
Restructuring is
when
what
they
I
did
call
that round of restructuring, and sometimes I always feel they're doing restructuring sort of in crisis. Oh my God, things are terrible. Quick, we restructure, and then a few years later, oh, things are terrible. We restructure, right? But they did settle on this sort of hybrid middle school, or I guess they typically
not a
call it
hybrid.
upper school now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
that's
well,
It's middle
that's a
school,
prep
it's a
school
lot
term.
of school, yes,
I mean,
it's
most
6 to
places
8,
call them,
right?
It's hybrid
6 to
only.
8.
I only use the term because they have some buildings that actually do double duty as the elementary programs and with the
Well,
middle
they were
schools
built,
tied to them.
right,
that
yeah,
was a design.
Yeah.
exactly,
That-
yeah.
Yeah, and that's not how. I mean, in New York City, you would never see
Yeah.
that, right?
Oh, I see. That's what you mean by hybrid.
Yeah.
I thought you meant in
Yeah.
the sense that Amigos
Yeah.
is not.
Right.
Other people thought we would have
No,
Right.
no,
hybrid.
in New York, it's elementary public school, PS
Yes,
979, and then you went to junior high school
Yep,
in 94.
that's what I
And
had.
then off you go into high
And-
school,
yep,
and,
that's
and
my
never the
experience.
twain shall meet.
Now, at the recent forum, there was a question about that, would you go back?
Right, I was surprised.
I
Were
know.
You were there,
Yeah,
right?
well,
Yeah.
no, I was
It was
listening to it
Margaret
today.
Fuller, I guess.
Yes, and
Yeah.
everybody said, no, you don't go back. And I like what you said, you have to look forward. And
Yeah.
so this is here to stay. The upper school is here
Well,
to stay.
it's here
Yeah.
now. I think
Yeah, spend
we
enough
just
money.
don't know
Yeah.
exactly, what
Still,
is in the next.
sure.
But as you say, restructuring is very disruptive. So it's
Yeah.
better to solve problems
Right.
in other ways than moving people around into different buildings.
So that's kind of settled.
Right.
That's going to
It's
be
for
the
now,
way
yeah.
the structure.
Yeah, that's
So
what we're doing.
Yeah,
you were asking, like, what is still
yeah,
be.
yeah. So that's
What are some
that
of the
is
issues?
more or less
Yeah.
settled for at least some period of
Right.
years, at least while they were rebuilding
Yes,
the
exactly.
buildings, right?
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
we
Like
started
the
building
kid-
this middle school, but
Right.
we decided not to.
Yeah.
Well, when the Tobin goes up and we
Yeah.
have all kinds of new families, we're going to be thinking, what is that?
Yes.
building for? But I don't think anybody's going to change the.
Right, but now the population,
Elementary
the elementary programs is actually
It's-
going up in recent
Yes, it
years,
Yeah,
right?
so
Yeah.
it's sort of like
The
they
younger
got rid of
grades.
those schools and now they're talking about, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the city is changing so quickly.
I
Yeah.
know, but does
So-
that mean they all are going to have kids in the school though?
I mean, the new people coming
Yeah.
in. Well, that's what we're not
Yeah,
sure, but I
right.
think if you have a lot of 2-bedroom apartments, you are going to have some kids, at least
Yeah.
in those younger grades.
Sure,
And
yeah. I figure one day, I live across the street from the old you have to say it right, the old Longfellow building, right?
Yeah.
And which has been like swing space for programs while they're doing some of these rebuildings. But eventually, when the major upper school buildings are done, I imagine people will then
Might be an elementary school again.
Yeah, could become, they can, just sort of, rehab it a bit and turn it back into it, because they may need the room.
Well, we need room for so many things in Cambridge, the early
Right.
childhood
Well, that actually
art
is, that's
space.
one of the big challenge, right? Trying to
Yes,
get more.
that I would
Can
say
you
is
talk
one-
about that a little?
that would be one of
Yeah.
the big issues that we're going to have to be starting to look
They
at.
had the round table on it, and
We had the round table, we had the task force report that came out in
Right.
2015.
Okay.
That task force is still going, and in the meantime, we are sort of growing little programs around, but there's not one comprehensive plan for. And I think of our responsibility as 3 and 4 year olds, and before that, I think of DHS really has to.
I mean, I have to
think about
say,
the pre-3-year-olds.
as a parent,
Birth
that
to 3.
didn't affect me. I mean, I don't know whether she's 30 now, so,
Mm-hmm.
but I did not realize that not everybody got into the JK.
That's
I
an issue
really
that
didn't. I
really
thought,
concerns
okay,
me.
so I know there's that cutoff date, and people
Yeah.
don't like that, but I thought, okay, if they turned 4.5 by March, whatever, they got into JK.
Well, that's
But
true.
apparently not. So how do they choose? Is it a lottery?
No. Everybody
Oh.
who had.
Oh,
It was very different when our kids were young. My kids started
Okay.
in 1997.
okay,
The way it works now is if your child is born between September
Yeah.
1st and March 31st,
right.
your child will go to JK and K.
So everybody.
Everybody who is in that
Oh.
birth cohort automatically is
Oh,
entitled to
so
that.
then they all get in.
They all get in. If your child is what we say a younger 4-year-old who's born between March and September, they will not be able to go to JK, and they will start as a kindergartner. So for me personally,
So
yeah.
it was the cutoff date that people were bothered by.
Well, see, and I'll explain to you the
Okay.
difference. So right
Yeah.
now, at least 50% of 4-year-olds are getting what I consider to be an extra year of public education, tax-free
Right.
funded education.
Right.
They're getting 14 years, everybody else is getting
Right.
13 years, which for
Right.
me is just a basic, if I'm paying taxes and you're
Yeah,
paying taxes,
sure.
and your child gets.
So it should be every 4-year-old by, is
Well-
that how would you do it?
Well, first I'll tell you why it didn't
Your
bother
birthday
you and
present.
me.
Your birthday present is, hey kid,
Go to school.
Yeah, well, back when our children
Yeah.
were young,
Yeah.
you entered school with a January 1st cutoff,
Yes.
the way we did
Yeah.
when we were all
Yeah, I
kids,
was
right?
January
That's right.
4th, so I know, yeah.
So if you were born
Yeah.
the fall, you were a little kid, but you
Yeah.
still went.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, and that was the way it was when our kids started in the 90s. So
Right.
they had this extra thing that if you were born
Right.
between January and March, you could kind of get this
Okay.
extra year, but
Okay.
it was only a quarter of the cohort.
Yep.
And preschool was
So-
cheap back then. I mean, you could send them to a
Yeah.
co-op preschool for a couple $1,000s a year and make
Not now.
sandwiches.
So
and-
not now,
yeah,
so then.
so all that's
okay.
changed.
All right.
So I think that's why it's become a real issue because it's more kids are getting in, and therefore you're excluding more. And
So
it's
how many
expensive.
more kids would that be if everybody could go in?
I think each cohort of that age is somewhere between 400 and 500 kids. So I think we're talking
Like
about needing
200?
about 200 more spaces. That's pretty imprecise, but
Okay,
the cohorts tend to be about 400 when they're around first, second, third grade, and they're bigger.
okay.
So I feel like we should do one of 3 things. We should either get rid of junior kindergarten altogether and just start a kindergarten, and we have a preschool system that's separate from elementary school, which is the way most towns, they don't start school, they don't have a junior kindergarten
No,
program.
right.
So we could do that. We could extend it to everybody come in at 4 years old, and that's somewhat what Boston is trying to do, and I think a lot of
Right.
school districts are going in that direction.
Right.
We could have it eligible only for all low-income 4-year-olds, regardless of birth date, so that'd be another way to do it. So you're essentially supporting the kids who have less access to preschool.
So they get first dibs.
Or only dibs. I mean, you could do it that way,
Oh.
that only if you are
Yeah,
have a
but
certain
boy, then that gets
cutoff.
sticky too. Like
Well, yeah.
what is affordable, who's low income?
Right, then you'd
you know?
have to set some kind of
Yeah,
criteria.
that's a
So
lot
that
of
would be another way to
yeah.
do it. Or you can have a system where you accommodate some kids in the public school, but then you pay tuition for them to go to other schools.
Whoa, yeah.
Because we have a whole preschool system.
Yeah.
But
and
not
parents
enough.
are paying for that. Or,
Right.
And the city does subsidize
Well,
some of these.
Right.
There's another wrinkle in all this, and again, I
Oh, there's
speak as
many
a person,
wrinkles, I think.
right? But I speak
Oh.
as a person who has now multiple, daycare and
right, where you
Montessori
live,
schools on
that's
my
right.
street.
Yes,
Yeah.
I visited them today.
And
Yeah.
and it's not like daycare is just babysitting anymore. It's
No.
they're like little preschools,
Yeah.
and some people buy into them, and they're not always so cheap. So and it's
Yeah.
apparently it's the thing
Oh,
people
it's
are
not cheap
doing
at all.
now. So
Yeah.
in terms of sort of, starting that achievement gap early,
Yeah.
it seems to be
Yeah.
kind of one of the repercussions of the access. And I don't know, maybe it's retail is sort of dying, but the thing is, there are actually now a lot of, like my whole
What
street.
happened to Head Start? Is that still around?
Yes.
Head Start was
But there are
came
not
into a
very
lot.
many centers in Cambridge, as I
Oh.
understand it.
Okay.
There's some, but I don't know.
I
Right.
just was wondering about the funding.
But there's a
Yeah.
discussion they keep having with and I think they're moving on it. It's sort of universal pre-K. So
Right.
it's not like it's not just your traditional school program. There seems to be this sort of extra thing. And is that supposed to be managed by Human Services program, or is that supposed to be coupled together with the school system actually?
Interesting.
You mean
The-
universal?
Yeah, when they're
pre-K?
talking about institutionalizing pre-K for all
Yeah.
kids in the city.
It's gotta be
Well,
both.
that's the
That's-
confusion. What do you mean by
Exactly.
universal?
Right.
Right.
Are you talking about full daycare, which is something like 8 to 6, which is what a DHS school is like, or rock and roll?
Yeah,
Or are you talking
and
about a
that is-
preschool, which is more like the Montessori, which I don't know if they could, actually I don't, a lot of preschools stop at 2:30 or 3 o'clock.
Right.
So, and then you have the JK program, which
Right.
ends at 2:30. So,
Yeah.
and since DHS runs preschools and CPS runs preschools,
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
why it's so difficult, is because the two bodies are overlapping, but.
And
Plus
actually,
they run the after schools too.
And
that's
on
what
the
I was
after
gonna
schools,
say,
yeah, it's very
At the
confusing.
other end of the game
Yeah.
there, at the after-school programs and the community school programs, that's another thing. It's sort of,
Same thing.
Well, community
School
school, you can
buildings
think
that
about it,
run
it's
by
not
the-
actually,
Exactly.
you don't really, you take classes, but it's not really geared towards kids who aren't,
well, it's
you know.
actually, it could be bunches of things.
It could,
you
it can
know.
be, I mean, a kid could
Yeah.
take a few different classes and maybe walk home if he's old enough, but
Yeah.
usually parents would want the after-school program where you have staff that are actually watching you till 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
It's 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 one
Or
of
they
those
can
confusing.
take-
Some
yeah.
people are using it as their after school program, and
Exactly.
the teachers are walking the kids to
They are.
first you're going to go
Alright.
to Spanish, and then you're going to go
Okay.
to tap dancing or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, but it's a little
community-
more-
but
yeah.
community
That's not what they're
schools-
really set up for.
No,
Community
they're not.
schools is,
Yeah.
is much about just sort of utilizing school buildings
Oh,
for
sure,
the community.
they are
So-
really multi-service centers,
Yeah,
they
so,
should be,
so whether
yeah.
maybe you're just going there
Yeah.
to play basketball or something like
Right.
that, and it was sort of an accessible place.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's
you know,
all of the
maybe just
above,
using
but,
school department
Well, they're all
assets
for
to do it.
kids. I mean, they're
Yeah.
not for adult. I mean, the adult uses like basketball.
Actually, some of the community school
Oh, are there?
programs.
I guess there are
when
adult programs.
Penny Cleese was doing one with Mid Cambridge at the Longfellow Building, she was teaching calligraphy, but I don't think they were all kids.
Oh,
You know,
really?
I think it was a little bit.
in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think it
oh
was.
yeah, community schools can
Yeah.
be different,
They
yeah,
can be
they
all
can
sorts
be
of
all
things,
kinds of
yeah.
classes at
Yeah.
night and
Okay.
stuff, but I know,
I'm
I was
listening.
thinking of it from in the school
Yeah.
building, like, right, but,
But then we do have these after-school programs. For example, King Open has the
Right.
extended day, which is one
right, my
program.
daughter did it at the Cambridge
Yeah.
Port when it used to be at Dana.
Right, but not all
Park.
schools have that, so
No,
it
they
really is a
don't.
patchwork.
Yeah.
So what is, so is the school committee talking to Human Services?
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
okay, and is there some way to, because I know in some of the things I listened to the roundtable,
Mm-hmm.
that they said there was a problem with, where do you put this? Where,
Yeah.
I mean, do they all go to one place, these kids? You know, I think Somerville
Yeah.
has something like that, the early.
They have an early childhood center.
Right, so
Yeah.
everyone goes there.
I
Actually,
don't know if everybody does.
Well,
I'm
but
not
it's
even sure who's
geared
eligible for it.
towards,
But it's young
Right.
kids.
One of
Yes.
the notions that got floated when they were redoing the Tobin area there, they said, "Oh, we'll just put in a big place where all the preschools go." And people said, "I don't think you want all the preschool kids
Oh.
in the city to all be going to
Right,
one site.
right.
The traffic alone is going to be a
Right,
problem."
it's a lot of car seats.
And
Well,
that's right.
right.
Your Alewife Burke Parkway already.
so what's your
you
thought
wanna do
about that? I mean, how would you approach it?
Well, I think we first need to figure out what our goal is.
Right,
and
how many kids do you want
how
to
many
service?
how many
and
kids do you want to
who
serve?
should- yeah.
We at the school committee have not seen those numbers. I think DHS probably. I think the task force probably
Right.
gathered them, and they're
Right.
trying to give us some of that
Right.
information. So how many kids are we talking about? What kind of money are we talking about in terms of who's going to pay, et cetera? And therefore, how much space do we need? And we have to kind of work from that and be very clear about what
Yes.
is the amount of space and where is
Yeah.
that space going to come from. There's space in our schools until. There's never space until you decide you need
Right.
to do something, and then you find space.
Right.
And that's the way the middle school model worked. They found space for
Sure.
it to work. We're adding a couple of kindergartens this year because
Right.
we have more kids. So,
Right,
and as
right.
somebody said, you can put them in storefronts.
right,
Yeah.
And we don't know what's
Like
going to happen
you
in
have-
Longfellow or the Foundry
Yeah.
building.
That's right,
Certainly,
yeah.
you don't want them all on one end of the
Regarding
No.
the Foundry, as I've Mitch this repeatedly, but when we first got it as sort of a gift, Bob Healy, when he was city manager, said this is going to be a problem because the moment we had the asset, everybody says, "Oh, I know what I want to do with that," and then honestly, now what 6-7 years have passed or something like that.
I know.
And they're still sort of arguing over it.
It's not the best. Open yet,
So we talked a little bit about some of the things that were kind of still or whatever, but what are some of the hard things right now before us? I mean, we just spoke about one of them. Is
Well,
sort
that's
of just,
very difficult.
That's a very hard one.
And we need to, approach it with urgency. Well, the other big task, I think, is this, it's not a difficult task, but the strategic plan has now come out in terms of a framework. The superintendent worked on that he had a
what does that refer to?
A strategic plan?
Yeah, is that a curricular or is it building?
No, it's a 3-year plan, and I think we as a school committee felt like we need a plan. We don't have a strategic
So it has
plan.
goals
It has 5.
meet,
It has
or-
5. It's a framework, really. It's not a
Right.
filled-in plan yet, but it has 5 categories of work that we do that all schools do. They're pretty much universal, but we have it on a piece of paper now.
Okay.
One is I can tell you what they are. Equity and access is one, so it's a real focus on making sure everybody gets equity of opportunity and equity of achievement. The next one is a description of the type of pedagogy that we want to have in Cambridge, which is engaged, active, joyful, rigorous. These are the types of words that are there. So that I think is all the work around curriculum and professional development. The third one is, let's see, what is the third one? The fourth one is partnerships. So that's
Right.
families and
Business,
nonprofits,
whatever,
businesses, community ones. The fifth one is progress monitoring.
Is that testing?
Well, it's testing the kids. It's how do you measure everything that we do, and
Right.
it's how do you gather data on whether
Right. Data, that's your kind of
yeah,
bailiwick, right? You love
I
data.
love data. I'll just
This guy too, right,
get it off my chest.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah,
You're not judging whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Right.
And the third one is called educating the whole child. And that's really
Right.
that we're not just here to, educate
Right.
the intellect, it's feelings,
I've been hearing
thoughts,
terms like
health.
socio-emotional
learning.
Yeah,
is the term.
Socio what?
social and
Social
emotional
emotional.
learning, right?
You know, you're-
Which is all the other things other than just learning how to.
Yeah, it's emotional
math,
intelligence, it's loving what
Emotional
you do.
intelligence.
Right.
You
Did
know, our brain
somebody
doesn't
talk
sort of
about that
split
years
them.
ago? Who was it?
Yeah,
The
there's a famous
educator,
book.
Jerome somebody? Or
Yes, I can't
You
remember his
don't
name,
know,
but
but
there's
you
a
don't
famous
get
book called
emotional intelligence.
Emotional Intelligence.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all that stuff.
Harvard guy, I think. Yeah.
Well, we're learning how much that is so critical to learning. You can't
Yeah.
learn if you're not emotionally
Right.
engaged,
Right.
even negatively. It's not always going to be a positive emotion,
Right.
but you have to be activated. Your brain needs that
Right.
input.
And one other issue I hear periodically, people talk about parents who made their selections for the controlled choice and they didn't get their choices
yes.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And I've heard some other candidates also are sort of at least talking about well, maybe we, every few years you should sort of take a good hard look and sort of say, are we doing it right? So
Yeah.
are we doing it right? Or
Because that is on
Yes.
your.
Okay. So what I was
you've
going to say
written
is
about that,
sort of
yeah.
figuring out that, supporting that plan, but the actual policies that don't have anything to do that plan is controlled choice. I think we have to look at it, and people talk, do you want to have it or do you want? We don't really have controlled choice anymore because we don't have the amount of choice that we had when our kids in the
Right.
90s. There
When it
were
was
magnet
magnet
schools,
schools, yeah.
everywhere.
Also, there's no
By
choice
design.
about upper school, right? If you're in that school, once you
No,
get it, you
Not
go to
really.
the,
No.
right.
Right.
So in
Unless-
some ways,
Yeah, so it's the same decision when you make
Exactly.
it a kindergarten.
what about JK though?
Well, you make it either JK or K.
Okay,
Wherever
so
you
once
come
you're in a
the system,
JK, that,
you'll just go. Yeah, unless you want to transfer, but
right,
JK
'cause that's
is the
another
entrance.
piece of that, expanding it,
Yeah.
which gets difficult.
Yeah, so we have. I really love controlled choice. I really love the philosophy. I was,
Right.
I grew up in the 1960s when integration was
Yeah.
something new.
Right.
Maryland schools where I was were desegregated the year I was
Yeah.
born. It was late.
Yes.
But the way it actually works, there's so many problems, and it becomes so stressful for parents.
Right.
And as I said, one of these, we've got a parent who lives up near Alewife or up near Arlington, and
Yeah.
going over to East Cambridge, and
Yeah.
we can fix problems like that.
Yeah.
But
Right.
we do have to
It's
sit
crazy.
down and do
Yeah.
it. So it's all the little details. It could be improved.
Right.
Wow.
Well, I've heard debates over the years, like should we allow a fluctuation of like plus or minus, so in terms of socioeconomic or racial balance
Exactly.
between, and it seems like it's sort of an endless tweak.
It is.
A permanent tweak.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how it has to be.
I think if you had district lines, which is what most places say, if you live on these streets, this is where you go, you're probably always adjusting them as your
Right.
population changes, right? Because all of a sudden you have more kids here and you have to,
Right.
so.
Sure.
But isn't it true that a lot of families, and maybe families that don't know how to, game the system, they actually want their kids to go to their neighborhood school?
Yes, yeah, and
You know?
and that's a question. And
Yeah.
the one thing we found out, I was on the Citizens Advisory Board last time we looked at controlled choice, which I think was 2014. And the main thing that we studied was the fact that there's many more kids in North Cambridge than can fit in those
Right.
schools that are on that side of Harvard
Yep.
Square.
Right.
So there's just a capacity problem,
Right,
not
and it's
even
been that way for years, because I remember
Has it?
everyone kept saying, there's a lot of kids in North Cambridge, we need
Yeah.
more, better programs, and this is, my daughter was like,
Yeah.
6 or 7, so, yeah,
Right.
interesting.
Well, hopefully
So
they
control
take that into
choice, yeah.
account when they're actually doing the building
Well, there's a building going up,
Yeah.
and the Cambridge Street School is
Yeah,
being
that'll
done,
be
and then
the
is
keynote.
Tobin gonna be renovated?
Yes,
Yeah,
that'll be the
next in
next
line.
The
one.
whole thing,
Yeah.
the upper and the lower? I mean, how they?
Yeah, the whole building will be torn
So
down.
we're gonna
Yeah.
put those kids?
And there's still some unsettled, I don't think they can pack them all into the long
No, I know.
Well, they
that-
might be able to
Should
build
they?
on site if they build the building.
That- I heard
Ah,
they
that
can
makes
split it.
I've heard
sense,
that
and maybe
plan,
do it in
yeah.
phases so that the kids are in one part of the building,
Yeah.
part of the year,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
There'll be some really
Wow.
big decisions, and there's going to be a whole question of where high school education is going. You know,
Right.
you and I.
Well, the whole tracking
You know, on the
thing,
STEAM,
yeah.
the whole STEAM,
Yeah.
well, the tracking, but also
Yeah.
the STEAM work that happened.
Oh, right,
With that whole
yeah.
STEAM committee, I think you were at meetings and things like that. We talked about
I went to
with
some of
Dennis
those,
and,
it was,
Nadine set up.
yeah, it's,
and that was
but,
very-
the problem is, they had zillions of meetings, and then there was another election happen, and just stopped.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
they did hire somebody, so.
Yeah, I know,
So,
but
we need to
That's
get
true,
that-
they did,
pick
yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I have no idea how that's proceeding afterwards.
Yeah.
You know, I every once in a while I still hear the discussion about STEM when the Foundry building comes up.
Oh, right,
Because
yeah.
that was going to solve
No,
all,
I just said
all the
STEM
world's
anymore. We gotta
problems.
say STEAM.
Oh, we got to say
STEAM,
STEAM.
oh.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
I'm
right.
just kidding.
Anyway, we got about
Okay.
1 minute left
All right,
here.
so
let's make
Sharon,
my time.
you get to
Yeah.
make your pitch.
So what I would say is if you would like me to return to the school committee, if you're looking for somebody who's very, very data driven, I think I took 5 statistics classes in graduate school. If you want somebody who has a professional background in education, somebody who really understands our schools, but from the parent perspective and from the kid, because I raised my kids and heard from them. So if you want somebody who's been involved in the city, you will definitely want to re-elect me to the school committee. And there's only one way you can do that, and that is by voting number one.
Right.
It's going to
It
be
is
a
about the
close
ones.
race about number ones, and
Yeah.
that is the most important
Yeah, I
message to
know.
know. So
That's
please
true.
vote for Emily Dexter number 1, because I will be doing that too.
All right.
All right.
And that
Yeah.
is 2 weeks from today, yes?
That's right. We're really
That's
down.
right.
It's just 2 weeks.
Yeah,
And,
and the polls will be closed in
And
Yeah.
another
just
month.
so people should know, there are some, CCTV has recorded a lot of school forums, so.
Yes,
go
All right,
definitely
so-
watch the forums.
we'll be back in 3 minutes
All
on
right.
Cambridge Inside Out.
Great, thank you.